Hello. In this video, we're going to discuss the idea that nothing comes from nothing. Sounds pretty weird, doesn't it? What it means is the idea that things don't just spontaneously show up out of nowhere. That everything in this world came from something before it. Now, when we talk about physical objects, I think you understand that. You just don't suddenly, not like a cup of coffee just suddenly pops up in front of you. But it's the same thing also with ideas and thoughts and changes in the way we view the world. And this is the key. When America created the first modern democracy, that idea did not just pop into the colonist's brain. There was a very long line of events that led to this idea. It begins way back in the day, even before Mr. Phelps was born. It goes all the way back to 1215, 800 years ago, which was in the middle of the Middle Ages. At the time, England had the worst king in its history, King John. And King John did a lot to anger the nobles. Now, they were, as you remember from last year, the nobles were the landowners. They were sort of the knights, the people who controlled the nation. And when you anger the rich and the powerful, they usually get mad and they get even. They revolted, and they forced him to sign something called the Magna Carta, which means the Great Charter. And in it, it claimed that the monarch, or the king, monarch is another word for king, was not all-powerful. Now, to be sure, it only protected the nobles and gave them certain rights and privileges, such as going to jail after a trial for a specific crime. So it only gave some rights to some people, just the nobles. But it started a precedent. It started the ball rolling. That little thing eventually applied to all of the English people. And so that's really the significance of the Magna Carta. It was the first time people could say, no, the king is not just totally all-powerful. There was some limit to his power. One long-term result of this was that the English people developed a firm belief in representative government. And that means that people elect, the ordinary people, now in this case not totally ordinary, the land-owning people, elect representatives. The representatives then go to vote on laws. This group of representatives became known as the Parliament. And the Parliament and the monarch became, eventually, things seemed to be okay, everyone worked okay. But in the 1600s, they had problems, and the Parliament and the monarch became engrossed in a struggle for power. And the Parliament even went so far as it removed King James II in 1688. Now, because nobody died when they had this war, it became known as the Glorious Revolution. Now, notice, this is the thing that's crazy. A group of people elected representatives in the Parliament, they got rid of a king without blood. That shows that Britain really did have a sense of representative government. Now, no one died. It became known as the Glorious Revolution, and the most important result of this war is that it made Parliament more powerful than the monarch. And this is true even to this day. The Parliament is more powerful than the king, or at this point, queen, even to this day. Shortly thereafter, in an attempt to clarify exactly what a ruler could and couldn't do, Parliament enacted a series of laws that limited the king's power. And these became known as the English Bill of Rights. The monarch could not keep Parliament from passing laws, and the monarch had to consult Parliament when creating special courts, or creating new taxes, or even raising an army. The members of Parliament would also be freely elected, and they had the right to say whatever they chose during parliamentary meetings. So when they had their representatives meeting there, they could say whatever they want without getting arrested, without getting their head chopped off. So that you're starting to see more and more power for people, less and less for the king. And this solidified the idea that the monarch was not totally supreme, and this is important. It led to the colonial belief that people had rights. People were entitled to certain things, like a fair trial by jury, and that there was no cruel or unusual punishment. So this is the next road that the colonists eventually, because remember, these are English colonists in the Americas, they took on this belief of limited power of the monarch and power for ordinary people that came from this parliamentary tradition and the English Bill of Rights. Now, eventually, they carried these ideas to the colonies. And in 1619, the colonists in Virginia chose 2 representatives from each community to meet with the governor. And these representatives, these people that they voted to represent them, were known as burgesses. That's a fancy name. Imagine being called a burgess. Hey, that guy, he's our representative. He's a burgess. Anyways, this group became, when they met together, they became known as the House of Burgesses. Now, they did not have a lot of power, and they really couldn't do a lot. They could meet with the governor, but this set a precedent for self-government in the colonies. And this is the longest, look at this, 1619, way back, we have representative government here in the colonies. Now, lastly, we have the Mayflower Compact. Now, on board the famous Mayflower in 1620, the Pilgrims made a plan to govern themselves, and this plan became known as the Mayflower Compact. The government would make just and equal laws for the general good of the colony. This, along with the Virginia House of Burgesses, set the stage for representative democracy as it would later come about after the Revolutionary War here in the United States. But they didn't just come out of it nowhere. These traditions, you can see, they came all the way back from 1215. So these are the things in English history that would eventually lead to representative government in the United States. With that, I wish you a good afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow. Unless tomorrow is a weekend, in which case I will see you Monday.